Mindful Live. Welcome to Mindful Live 293. Are we on right now? Oh, 294, my bad. We're moving quite briskly along. It's the 19th of October 2023. I'm your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It's a Thursday, and on a Thursday, we're just chilling, we're talking about whatever topics come into the live, what people would like to discuss. So that's the main idea for tonight. But there's a story that has been on my radar for a couple of days now, really and truly, and the story tells a kind of little scary, a kind of scary foreboding prediction it kind of makes. You see, we previously were given permission by Big Daddy United States to be able to make a deal with Venezuela for a dragon field. There's a dragon field that has gas, gas is the main thing, and it's situated kinda in between Trinidad and Venezuela. So ideally, to maximize use of it, you need cooperation between the two. And Venezuela has been under sanction from the United States because Venezuela is run by bad guys, horrible people who do people bad things, and the United States doesn't like people who do people bad things, so the United States doesn't want to do business with Venezuela. Alright, so that's the reason, of course. So they have sanctions against Venezuela. However, for some strange reason now, they lifted part of that sanction and allowed Trinidad and Tobago the privilege to go and do a deal with Venezuela. However, because Venezuela was still the bad guys, the deal was only allowed to be done without the payment of actual cash. You could have done the deal, but you can't actually send money towards these bad guys, because bad guys getting money would allow bad guys to do other things with the money. So maybe the ideal thought with that was maybe you trade some resources that they would have no choice but to use for a good thing. All right. However, recently, as of this week, an announcement was made that actually you could go ahead and trade. An extension was made on the deal, and they allowed us to trade in various ways. But doesn't Russia and China have ties with Venezuela concerning oil and gas? Yes, they do, but that doesn't really have anything to do with our portion here. America still gets gas from Veni. Yes, they do. Pay them in tomatoes. But now they're allowing us to do that deal and pay cash. And now that we do that deal, things may get beneficial for us. Let's jump in over on that story. TNT can pay cash for dragon field gas. Trinidad and Tobago can now make cash payments to Venezuela for the natural gas extracted from the Dragon Field, Energy Minister Stuart Young has announced. He also disclosed that the United States government has approved an amendment to the license granted in January for the joint development of the field. The previous requirement imposed by the United States in the January license, which prohibited cash payments for the gas, had posed a significant challenge and appeared to jeopardize negotiations, with Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro publicly criticizing its inclusion. I am pleased to tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago that today the United States government has issued through the Treasury's Department to the government of Trinidad and Tobago an amendment to the license that we had requested in the terms that we have requested, Young said yesterday. It also allows the government of Trinidad and Tobago, working along with NGC and Shell, to negotiate complete negotiations and all agreements that need to be done with the government of Venezuela and PDVSA, that's the Venezuela National Gas Company, for the development and production and the export of that gas from the Dragon gas field into Trinidad and Tobago, for us to develop it and for us to make payments in fiat currency, as well as US dollars, as well as Venezuelan bolivars, as well as via humanitarian measures, which is what was envisaged initially, he said during a news conference at the Ministry of Energy. So yeah, we could trade cash now for gas. And I can't help but wonder, for us to sell because TNT can't sell it for ourselves. I have to wonder, what caused the change of mind? If let's look at the various steps. If initially you wanted no trade with Venezuela because Venezuela is run by an authoritarian government, it's basically a dictatorship. You want no trade with them, okay? What changed to suddenly allow some trade now? What in this situation changed? Because it's the same leaders in the same country. All right. And then what changed from January to now? Initially, the idea was no cash. And all LNG, right? Thank you. For LNG for US to sell because TNT can't sell for itself. Yeah, the idea initially was no cash. Good night, Friday forever. And the reasoning, ostensibly, the reasoning put forward for no cash is that you do not want to supply a state that is authoritarian, a state that may very well fund terrorism, you know, that's becoming in the front of the news again. A state that may very well find themselves funding terrorism. So you don't want to send cash to a bad country like that. So what changed? It's still the same Nicolas Maduro as president. He wasn't deposed in the passing time. So add bricks to the equation. Brenzo says, Wendell Garcia says, after the war between Russia and Ukraine started, everything changed. And yeah, I am starting to feel that feeling too. So the war between Ukraine and Russia, I would assume, allowed some changes in the initiation of this dragon gas deal. January, where they first gave us permission, which is a very strange thing. I would always say it every time I talk about this. The idea that we have to get permission from the United States to do a deal between two independent countries seems ridiculous, but okay. After January, when we got permission, I think that was the Russia-Ukraine situation that caused that. Mikhail asks why we need permission. We need permission because we want to trade with the United States. A lot of our trade, export and import, is done with the United States. So they have that hanging over our heads. We do not want to be cut off from trade with the United States and their allies. So when the United States says anyone allied with us that trades with us must do XYZ, you don't have to do XYZ. You could do ABC if you want, but then you lose trade with the United States. And basically no country in the world really wants to lose trade with the United States. But anyway, in January, the consideration may have very well been Russia-Ukraine. But then the consideration seemed to have changed, because even with the Russia-Ukraine consideration, the idea was no cash. Just see if you could give them some tomatoes and baigan and maybe send over some flour or something like that. No cash. But all of a sudden, things start to heat up in the Levant area. Hamas from Gaza, Israel, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Jordan, airstrikes in Syria, Yemeni rockets, all tied to Iran, Iraq chomping at the bit. I believe U.S. embassy in Beirut was torched. Things are starting to heat up. Ramjan Bash says US give permission when they can profit. Well, of course. And you know, in the real sense of it, I can't blame the United States for that. Of course they give permission when they can benefit. That's kind of what a country is supposed to do. A country's government is supposed to seek the interests of the country. But that is about to change because the US dollar is plummeting. It may be plummeting. Now, the reality is, in order for the US dollar to really plummet, for the US dollar to sink, there would have to be some other kind of global store of value that can rise in competition. And I know people are talking about BRICS and the BRICS currency, etc., but that isn't yet a known entity. US dollars still are the main trade accepted store of value across the world, so maybe, but at least not now. So it's white jacket, black jacket, we plain white jacket, black jacket. I don't agree it will take years before we can undo the power the US dollar has. Correct, it took over 100 years for the US dollar to overtake the pound. Yeah, it's not something that can happen very easily. It's something that takes time. The US dollar took time to reach where it was. And I mean, it's not going to just be deposed just like that. Good night. This is the host. The hostess has finally decided, you know, she'll come and give us a short time. But yeah, it's not something that would just disappear like that. And the reality of how those things work is money, by and large, works because of confidence. The confidence people have in the money. And whatever confidence people have in the money is whether it functions or not. That's part of the reason that the US loves always giving money to people all around the world. So there's war in Gaza and in Palestine and Israel. Palestine and Israel. There's war, and one of the things the United States did, I saw the United States president went to visit. He went to visit the region, and one of the things he did was he promised money for Israel. He promised Israel that he's going to send some money for them. And then he promised to send 100 million to Gaza also. So money on both sides, and what that actually does, beside fueling war and conflict possibly and all of that, the money on both sides actually makes the both sides spend the money. And when both sides spend US dollars, more US dollars are spent. Who collecting for Gaza? Ramjan Baksh? You know the answer to that question. More enemies US make BRICS will grow faster. The thing is, BRICS isn't just about enemies of the United States. BRICS isn't just about enemies of the United States, because there are enemies of the United States who would not want to stop trading with the United States, at least not anytime soon. As it is right now, China doesn't want to stop trading with the United States. That will not benefit China. Very likely, if trade is cut cold turkey between China and the United States, there's a strong possibility that China would be hurt more over that. 30 trillion plus in debt. That debt is a joke, really and truly. China lost Apple to India. Yeah, but nonetheless, they don't want to stop trading with each other, really and truly. The trade does benefit. And China has a lot of US dollars stored too. So it's a lot more complicated than just getting rid of it. As I said, in order to get rid of the US dollar, something of more or comparable trustworthiness must be able to come up. And I know some people are talking about the central bank digital currencies with some of this, and maybe some of that may actually displace some US dollars, but I think that's kind of more of the same. US can outsource elsewhere, India, Philippines, Mexico. Yes, they can. Why will they give Hamas more money? Better they didn't give anybody money. Well, that's what many of the pro-US people, the anti-war people, anti-intervention people, that's what they are saying. Let's give nobody money. And the thing is, it's very easy to make a case why you give somebody money. So, well, Israel, if you don't give them any money, they are surrounded by enemies. They may be wiped out. And if Israel runs out of money, yeah, as it stands, it's easy to understand the humanitarian cause for the Palestinians because Israel seems a lot stronger. But if Israel runs out of resources and they don't have the backing of the United States, you may actually see what many of those Arab countries would like to do with Israel, and that won't be a pretty sight on the global stage either. So you could understand why someone would make the argument you have to give money to Israel, and then people make the argument to for the Palestinians also. They are in dire straits. They are basically captives. It's as if it were they are hostages of both the Israelis and Hamas in Gaza there. So they need some humanitarian resources, so you can understand why that is. And it's kind of the same reason for government to get involved in something. While the reality is, when we see the involvement as reality hits, as the rubber meets the road, as it were, regularly you notice that the involvement doesn't help. The real war is over chips and Taiwan. That's part of many things. They give Hamas money or the Palestinian government money. They're sending humanitarian money, 100 million, I believe, to Palestine. But the problem is the Palestinian government in Gaza is Hamas. That created some conflict the last 2 days, where there was some reported bombing of a hospital, and the Gaza Health Ministry released some figures and some facts, only for the next day many people to recognize, wait, this was a hoax. And then they are shocked by the fact that Hamas Health Ministry isn't 100% honest with what they say. It's amazing how things happening across the world eventually affects US economically. Globalization. Yep. Globalization makes it affect everyone, really and truly. It trickles down to everyone, the idea of globalization having an effect. You can't escape it. We're all in it together, the global community, as they call it. But anyway, folks, it's a Thursday. You know, you could jump in to talk if you have anything to say on this Thursday. Any comments to make, any ideas you want to bring across. Gaza don't have electricity, no wire transfer. You know, that is not true. Like, people keep saying some of these things when it's provably false. People say Gaza has no electricity and no internet, while there are people live streaming out of Gaza. Like, okay, you could say Israel cut off the electricity supply from the Israeli side, but that's not the same thing as saying they have no electricity and no internet, when I can see the live streamers day by day. Like, come on, we've got to actually be honest about the things that we see. Don't just allow the narratives to carry us. People would say something, hey, look, that man killing out all the chickens, and the chickens are multiplying. So you don't allow the narrative to lead your belief before you see the evidence. Let the evidence lead your belief, not the narrative, because narratives are crafted. What, Hamas infiltrated the government? No, Hamas didn't infiltrate the government. Hamas was voted for and voted into power in 2005, I believe. They won a democratic election. I believe the election was actually recognized around the world as a democratic election, and they won. And that creates some problems in the region. You see, like, the reality is many of the people who might be more moderate, less extreme in Gaza may have moved out already. So, you know, good evening, Curve On. What's going on, bro? This could never be the wars they show us in movies, because them people on TikTok don't really look scared. Well, it's according to what they're saying, where they are, and what's going on. The reality is, a lot of the bombing that happens in that part of the world, they are warned. It's not like the bombs drop all of a sudden. Many times there are pamphlets dropped before, then there's a warning artillery strike to just make a loud noise to get people to move, and then after that comes the actual air strike. So many of the times it's not as dangerous as just standing there and you blow up randomly. What do you think about ExxonMobil and the influence in Guyana? Well, that's just the thing. When many of the Guyanese were boasting about they're going to do things different from Trinidad and it's oil and no oil, etc., etc. Now, you could go back and look at the articles speaking about the deals that Exxon struck with Guyana, where it could seem like Exxon goes away with the 90% and leaves the 10% for Guyana to share up and to use to cover all of the other costs. It could seem like that. And I have spoken on this to some extent before, where the reality of the situation is that Guyana would not have the capital to get best use of their natural resources without the input of those multinational companies like Exxon. So, yeah, Exxon does have an advantageous deal going on right now in Guyana, but without it, Guyana may have gotten nothing. Now, another part with that, as someone was talking about the Guyana and Venezuela fracas that seems to be going on right now, there's actually a link between that Venezuela and Guyana and Exxon business also, because Exxon has bad blood with Venezuela. As some of you may know, Venezuela was well, not always, but for a long time now was an oil producer, and they were eventually taken over by a more socialist style government. So what happened is the government basically seized the assets of the massive oil companies in the country. So Exxon, and they have kind of bad blood with Venezuela. And part of the allegations that have been throwing around recently is that the bad blood, some of the bad blood that was fomented between Venezuela and some of those companies is actually fueling some of the situation we see right now with Venezuela and Guyana. Which makes it very interesting to me. If it is that Exxon remembers the wars they had in Venezuela, and they're using their new position in South America, in Guyana, to get back there, that would be interesting. That would be very interesting. I'm trying to see if I could find the article where Maduro accused Guyana of going along with the Exxon. Right. Let me see. I found this story here where some of those accusations were flying about. Incentive for exploration in Guyana. ExxonMobil promised 150 billion over 30 years. That is crazy. Venezuela's Maduro baselessly accuses Guyana's ally of violating Treaty of Geneva. Venezuela's National Assembly unanimously approved a national referendum that would seek support for Venezuela's defense of the disputed Essequibo, a resource-rich strip of land controlled and administered by Guyana, against the American empire. Reuters reported on September 23rd, citing Venezuela's Foreign Affairs Minister. Guyana's president responded saying Venezuela's move is an affront to the rule of international law. Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro parried via X, formerly known as Twitter, accusing Ali of hypocrisy and false victimization. Ali is turning Guyana into a branch of ExxonMobil and allowing the United States to turn it into a military base against Bolivar's Venezuela, Maduro wrote. The United States has previously denied that it has any plans to set up a military base in Guyana. The Pentagon did not comment on Maduro's latest accusation. But that's the idea coming out from Venezuela, that Guyana isn't moving fairly with this, and Guyana is now under the control of the U.S. interests and the U.S. multinationals such as Exxon. The globalists, the global capitalists are now have their hooks in on Guyana, and they are looking to use it to launch a kind of attack on Venezuela to some extent. The truth is, to be very honest with you all, I don't even think Mr. Maduro is necessarily wrong on that front, you know. He may very well be right. Because those multinational companies, those corporations, they do hold bad blood. They do have interest in geopolitics and moving political situations to their benefit all around the world. So I don't doubt it. Trini Hotep, I know you said you had something to come in with from the very jump off, bro. What's going on?
Nah, let me just touch on this thing. Yeah, I don't think Maduro is wrong about that either. Regardless of if America has certain gripes with certain countries that sway in a particular way in terms of their politics and their economic, theories, right? Be it socialism, but I don't think Maduro is wrong about that, right? Because let's be real. When America sends money or sets up whatever company within other countries, it's definitely to influence the politics of that country, right? America influences a lot of the politics in many countries, and they are swayed in a particular direction. That's why America has the power that they have, right? But in the particular case of the Dragon gas deal and now being able to trade in that particular direction, to me, it seems that America is in need of the of the funds. They're in need of the trade because they are shipping a lot of funds to Ukraine and to Israel at the moment, right? I think they are in a bit of an excess at this point because I think.
What you talking about? Their Treasury Secretary, what's her name, Janet Yellen. Recently, she was asked literally, "Do you think you can fund 2 wars on 2 fronts?" And she said, "Yes, they can."
I saw that, and she probably is correct, by the way, because as we be on Twitter, right? What America has sent aid to Ukraine? What, about 4 or 5 times in the excess?
Upwards of $100 billion.
Exactly.
You see, the United States is playing a scheme. So it's not that their money could run out because they are printing it. The printers don't run out of paper and ink. The issue is at any point in time, if anyone would call them on the bluff, as it were, because they are using their power, their geopolitical power, to force people. So we are printing this money, but while we are printing it, we are insisting that you buy things all around the world with it. If somehow the insistence on buying things falls through, the printing falls through. But as long as the insistence on buying things continues, then all they're doing, you see the idea that they talk about that they're in debt and they're borrowing from their children and their children's children, that's BS. What they're doing is watering down because the money isn't being borrowed from the unborn children. The money is being the resources, not money. The resources are being extracted from the current world that exists. And they're promising the current world that exists that while we extract your current resources, our children's children will pay for it for us. But no, they won't. The reality is, the world doesn't believe that the United States children's children will pay for it. The only reason that the world keeps playing along with it is because the US is the main power. That's the reality as it stands. So the debt is irrelevant. The borrowing is irrelevant. The only thing that stands is the geopolitical positioning. As long as they remain at the top, they could continue doing what they're doing basically. Someone asked if I think US would defend their interests ExxonMobil if Venezuela attack. Yes. Hell yes. They probably would wish that Maduro take God out of his thoughts and attempt to attack. That perfect.
That would be a perfect time to. That would be actually a perfect time to for the military to occupy parts of Venezuela and install their other guy that would be more democratic. So let's be real. I mean, the US have backed other Venezuelan politicians to as presidents, right? I've seen that whole thing that went on during the pandemic or whatnot. But
I'm trying to remember the guy's name. His name just keeps slipping my mind.
I forget his name. But this is the thing. To me, when people talk about China, having this sway over America, to some degree, yes, because they might be in trillions of dollars of debt. But to me, America had the power to just
Juan Guaido, right?
Generating a massive amount of resources, money, right? Because if America could send hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine and then keep sending money to Israel every year and then support Israel in the midst of this war and have been supporting Israel in the midst of this conflict since 1947. So and then have the gall and gumption to house millions of now illegal immigrants that have come into Chicago and New York and house them with free money and free housing. America has the might to do whatever they please. This debt means nothing. China's debt means nothing to America. They will never cease to not exist. The money will not crumble anytime soon, even though yes, China might be playing the long game. It's not like if it's going to happen. And to me, I don't think that some countries want to call America's bluff. I mean, Russia loves to try to do it all the time, right? I mean, right now, I think Russia is sending aid to Gaza as we speak.
Yes.
Calling the bluff of America because they're sending aid to the Ukraine. So, some countries that enough power they hold, they might call America's bluff. And that's the truth.
Some do, but the problem that those countries have is they don't have printers of US dollars. So for what Russia is doing, they have to actually have the resources to do it. And that's the benefit of Russia, and it's why the United States sanctions don't really work that effectively on Russia. Russia has the actual resources. They have the oil, they have the minerals, they have the metal, they have the food. They actually have it in the soil. So technically they don't need the US dollars. The US dollars is more to allow Russia to move smoothly in the global economy. But it's not like they need it as much. But if you're a country without the printer for US dollars and you don't have enough resources to sway your weight around on your own, it's very difficult to move outside of the US influence in that case. It's extremely difficult. Someone said, but Venezuela not fighting alone. Venezuela would be fighting alone. Venezuela is in the Western Hemisphere. Russia will not be able to effectively defend Venezuela. I think many people don't even have a good close to estimate about the military might of the United States. The United States doesn't win wars because it's nearly impossible to really win a war. If you look throughout time, the way you win a war is you decimate the people, you kill everybody, and you put your people in and start over from scratch. But to do that in modern times, you would seem a very immoral, bad person. So anytime you go into a place, you beat out the people, the main people who fighting, the civilians will just rise up against you. It's nearly impossible to win a war like that. But if you're talking about army versus army, it's not even close to comparison. The United States spends something like a couple times they're number one and number 2 to 10 of the other top 10 spenders in military. I think they spend a fraction of what the US spends in totality on their military. It's not even close. So that's why Venezuela wouldn't jump out there. I don't think they would. Very likely the US has a pretty sure location on Maduro. They may be able to scramble a drone to personally take him out within a couple hours. That's not a game he might want to play necessarily. America is very good at achieving military objectives, but not political ones. I agree. And the thing is, I think political objectives are just very difficult to achieve. You look in Trinidad and Tobago, and political objectives are hard to achieve. Like the idea that the Imam had back in 1990 that he would just take over and Trinidad would just fall into place after that. That's not going to work. People don't function like that. For you to take over and run the country, you have to do it with an iron fist. People like their own way. Nobody in the world can touch the US military. US military is Hollywood, the next guy says. That's rubbish. Their military is not Hollywood. Do not allow that gaslighting to work on you. The US military is not Hollywood. The US military is by leaps and bounds the most fearsome and capable military in the world. The problem is there are some issues that cannot be solved militarily. They couldn't beat the Vietnamese even though they had a superior military, because you have to murder everybody. They couldn't beat the Afghanis and the Taliban even though they had a superior military, because you would have to murder everybody. They couldn't beat the Iraqis even though they had a superior military, because you would have to murder everybody. You just don't go and beat out the military and think, I'm going to install my leader and he's going to rule. It doesn't work like that. The world no longer fears the United States military power. That's a thing of the past. Okay, name one country in the world. Name one country in the world right now that outwardly aggresses on the United States. Name one. Overtly aggressors on the United States. Name one. Seeing that the world no longer fears the... Like, come on, man.
There is none. There is none. And people would love to say China, but even China doesn't want to start a military war with America. That doesn't bode well for China in terms of their population, in terms of their economy. China do not want to revert back to what they were previously. That's just nothing. And listen, China have the largest army. That's just pure was alone. That's based on population size, but they don't want to even start wars. That don't make sense, right? Starting a war with the most powerful military in the world doesn't make sense. And yes, China might have some allies, but come on, man, come on, let's be real about this, man. It's not as simple.
Here's what happens when you fight the United States. If you're talking about taking over your country, the US, with the US military, may never be able to conquer Trinidad unless they kill everybody. But they may never be able to conquer Trinidad. But if Trinidad were to go on a military mission against the United States, every leader of the military faction will die. That's why the only people who win against the United States are the guerrilla fighters, where you don't even know who the leaders are. If you are a leader and you raise your head against the United States, they can get you anytime. Remember when Trump decided, you know what, I'm going to listen to the generals, the head of the Iranian army. You all think we should kill him? What you all think? We should kill him? This is the head of the Iranian army, who is directing Hezbollah, Hamas, coordinating that in the Middle East. A very big guy. I don't feel we should kill him. I'm not sure. And this is the issue when you're talking about droning Russian assets, because it's geopolitics. If you kill him, yes, you're going to get a lot of people angry, and are you going to be able to deal with the consequence of their anger? But it's not a matter of being able to kill him, because when Trump decided, kill him now, a drone went out on his convoy, and that was the end of Soleimani. No more Qasem Soleimani. Bye-bye.
That's technically how it works right there, man.
It's amazing how the people with the least military always fight them off. Haven't you been listening, Mr. Face? You're back. Haven't you been listening? It's not about military might when it comes to fighting for your country. It's just like Gaza and Israel. If Israel wanted, they could have turned the entire Gaza Strip into glass. But then you're not going to look good on the global stage. You're going to have consequences to pay. So you don't want to do that. It's not easy. People wonder, why is this Israel is only doing airstrikes in Gaza? Do you think Israel could send in a ground force? Israel has top 5 military in the world. Do you think they could send in a ground force into Gaza to clear out Hamas? No. Lots of their men will end up dying. And that's the thing. It's not about military might. It's about people's country. Don't take over people's country like that.
But even in the midst of this, as I think Israel have said many times, that they fear for their own military men entering such a place, right, where they could end up dying. So military might doesn't make any sense. This is the thing, right? You need to listen to some of the Vietnam American soldiers who went to Vietnam, and some of the leaders. They said before they even touched down, in that jungle, they said they was going to lose.
Yep.
Off rip, they said they was going to lose. They didn't even set foot in Vietnam yet. They said they was going to lose. And they were strong. Like, come on. But the thing about it is military might don't mean anything to particular things, right? It don't mean something to guerrilla warfare, because listen, if Viet Cong was doing guerrilla tactics, that's just the truth of the matter. They will. Some of the leaders they have never seen. Some of the leaders calling shots from places that they wasn't even there. So America is going to lose that war from the onset thinking but enter any war. So
the issue with that is there's a term for it. It's called asymmetric warfare. And it's like what goes on, asymmetric warfare is what goes on in Israel at the moment. And that's part of the reason the United States has to keep funding Israel. So a Gaza rocket costs $50. The Iron Dome to shoot down the rocket costs tens of thousands. Every time they shoot a rocket, you lose more than they lose. It costs you more to do the same action than them. And that's generally how the US military works. It's asymmetric warfare. Now, when the US is there to control the whole thing, it's an amazing thing. But when they're not there, it's like what happened in Afghanistan. Why the Taliban was partially so able to easily take over after the United States left is because to run the US military equipment requires US infrastructure, US logistics. If you don't have the connection to all their satellites, to all their intelligence officers inside of Langley and wherever else, running those drones etc. makes no sense. It's asymmetric warfare when they're fighting guerrillas. It doesn't cost them the same thing, and that's part of the reason. Now, someone asked if I believe US is the world's most wicked country. No, I do not believe so. I actually don't. As Ronnie said, they're up there. I wouldn't even put them up there, to be very honest with you. I think most countries, when put as a country, function pretty wickedly, and the reality of the wickedness that many countries do is just a matter of their size and capabilities. If we were large enough to do some of the things the United States did in terms of the general tendency of our country, we would do the same. There are people in Trinidad and Tobago that rob from the food card the people that need food cards in Trinidad and Tobago. You think those people, if they weren't on the global scale, wouldn't have robbed from Haiti? Well, speaking about robbing from Haiti, you all know the Trini track record and robbing from Haiti. So even if you want to call France the most evil country in the world because they robbed from Haiti, bear in mind, when they robbed from Haiti, they considered Haiti to be their military enemies. That was still more excusable. When the Trini allegedly robbed from Haiti, they were the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, and you still robbed from them. Listen, people are selfish, and when you agglomerate lots of people into a government, so a government is comprised of several hundred people working at different areas in the government, very likely, you have all of that wickedness, as it were, compounded. And that wickedness compounded, you're going to see the results of that all around the world. So I wouldn't say the United States is the most wicked country. I'll say that they have been the most powerful country on the face of the earth ever. So you're able to see them do things that many other countries were not capable of doing. I think a nice test of that is imagine other countries given the position and power that the United States has. If you gave Mugabe, when he ran Zimbabwe, the power and reach of the United States, the globe may have been decimated. And it's a question I ask sometimes, even in this whole Middle East conflict thing sometimes. Does less power make your action any less reprehensible? So, if someone came to me and they had an old gun that's sticking and it could barely shoot, but they kept pulling the trigger 15 times, trying their best to shoot me in my head, and I have really nice weapons, an AR, something nice and prime, working properly, and on the 16th try I find it looking like this thing might shoot now and I return fire, who is the more wicked one? And I'm not necessarily saying this is what is happening there, but I'm talking about just how we evaluate things in general. And I'd say the United States, it's a factor of them being so powerful why they seem so evil also. I'd say France is the most wicked country, and I could understand why many people will say that. But even if you will say that, one, you have to bear in mind France has been existing for a long time, so the wickedness could accumulate. We haven't been around that long for us to have our wickedness accumulate. That's one. Two, for such a wicked country, they do accept a lot of migrants. That seems to be licking them up right now. It's difficult for me to adjudicate that wicked country business, and really difficult for me to do that. Really difficult. I find some of those African countries are some of the worst countries that ever existed in terms of their leadership and what they put out there. When you read what some of them encouraged as part of their culture, some of them were horrific. And many people that say things like the United States is the wickedest or France is the wickedest, if given the chance, their actions belie that they don't believe the words that they say. If given a chance to go live in the Benin monarchy when it existed, or go live in the English Commonwealth as it existed, we know where you would go. We know where you would go. Yeah, Ronnie, what's going on?
I was coming up to just talk a little bit about the American military, right?
Yeah.
And nobody coming up against them and whatever. I think the American military, if they continue going down the road that they're going down, they'll find themselves in some problems because they can't it's not that they can't recruit properly, but they're in a little mess with recruiting.
Yeah, they're struggling recruiting.
And then you have the situation where the men of America have become so effeminate. It's just they're kind of cutting the stuff up a little bit now. And no technology kind of had a back, right? So they could use drone and all these things. So it's no longer men on the ground. So it don't really have to be real aggressive like that. But when you think about it, like China banning all these K-pop fellas, they do allow their children to play video games so much, they do allow them to be on TikTok so much. They literally building stronger people in China versus what America doing. They literally weakening all of the people. So it's like in a few years, and if they continue with the way they're going, they may find themselves weakening themselves to the point where another country's military may very well be able to handle them.
You know,
again, technology will be on their side.
But that's what I was gonna say there. What you're saying there is so real, and many people, I don't know if you saw the trend about men thinking about the Roman Empire and all of that. Many people compare those things to the end and fall of the Roman Empire, and there are several factors to it. Where you talk about other countries may come in and stuff, yeah, that's one. The end of the Roman Empire, the barbarians are always at the gate. So although you might think you're so big and strong and safe, there's always a group of people out there who are the risk takers. There's the group of the ghetto people online who always talking about big up to the risk takers. There are global risk takers who would always take the risk, and if you get weak enough, they will take the risk. Now, the Roman Empire still didn't fall to the barbarians, so even though there might be enemies that might try to take advantage of the weakening, I still don't think necessarily those enemies may be capable. As I said, look at the difference in funding of militaries from the top one being US to all the others. It's not close. The problem though is I think they are running out of people that believe in the United States anymore in the first place. And that's a problem. If the Roman and blue, and they stand with their hand on their chest and a tear rolls down their eye when the national anthem plays, they're running out of those people. So they're running out of people that believe the United States should even be a unique individual entity. There are people who think their borders should be open. There are people who think the United States shouldn't exist. They have people in their Congress who believe the United States should not exist. That's a scary thing. And that's not about some enemies from the outside coming in and taking them over. No, that's them fizzling out. That's them not having the motivation.
And I think that might be actually where somebody would take advantage of the situation, right? The lack of any enthusiasm for one's country. And we see it all the time festering in America. We see it all the time. America is the number one country where that festers, right? They share. And listen. We could talk about patriotism, you know what I'm saying, and if that should come before anything else in terms of one's national status, right? Mm-hmm. But there has been a festering of the liberal idea that America should not seek its interests like they do. They should just, be equals with everybody in the world, and that's technically not how it operates or goes, but that's how it is, right? So, and this is why I find things like the UN to be a funny kind of organization, right? Because there's people sitting down with you in that room that are willing to stab you right there in the neck, given the opportunity. You understand what I'm saying? Anytime you look like you shaky.
Bro, you know what aggravates me at the UN and global interactions? There are so many different worldviews that they're all trying to unite under this one liberal ethic. And the thing is, several of the other worldviews recognize this and they use it. The head of Hamas quoting George Floyd, that Israel is attempting to do to Gaza what the US police do to George Floyd. You understand? Go look at the number one racist places in the world. Palestine ranks as number 6 or something like that. You think they like black people there necessarily? It's racist as many other places in the world. But they understand the ethic that the US and the UN attempt to use, and they will use it against them. The UN out here attempting to say that, the number one consideration is rights and freedom and da-da-da. And people sitting there, and have slaves in their country, They have slaves back home picking their fruits, and they're like, we vote on this resolution.
It's good propaganda at best, right? It's really good propaganda. And that's why I've tweeted many times. I say, listen, if you're sitting down in Birmingham, in London, and talking about anti-imperialism, and talking about the oppression and the apartheid, I'm like, bro, they're using that same propaganda to have your bleeding heart out there, while they hold views to annihilate your same anti-imperial self that sits in London. And if they're given a chance, they will do it. And then they go be like, well, what I do nothing. All I do is support you. They didn't ask for your support. They did not. So to me, it's like you all need to know how this thing operates. Now, to me, the UN only serves a good purpose in terms of trade and economics between countries, not trying to be under one cultural or societal standard. That doesn't make sense.
No, it does not.
All countries need to do is trade with one another, and that's at best way you can get it. All countries, because 180 plus of them, could ever get under one mode of anything. Too many cultures, too many identities. That's not how it works. So, no, there's plenty of people that are willing to they have the knife behind their back, and they're willing to stab America anytime it feels good. And when I point out the fact of, do you know who is the permanent members of the UN? Russia, America, China, that's the first three, and they don't like each other. Well, Russia and China have a relationship, but they are permanent members of the UN, and they fight each other all the time. So it's like, propaganda at best. It's really that at the heart and core of it all.
Yep. Rani, you were saying you wanted to say something?
Yeah. So, over the past few, as you were talking about in recent times, the kind of anti-patriotism that flows through America and stuff like that. And I don't know if you realize these certain hashtags that started going with pre-Palestine, which was the BLM, the LGBT, and who was the other boy? I remember who was the other? Probably from feminists, because all of them go together. All of these people, none of which could really live peacefully under Hamas, right? None.
Correct.
And it's like, you're siding because all they do is view the world two ways: oppressed, oppressor, or like who has more power. Everything is about power dynamics. But if you in the situation, wouldn't you want to be the one who has the power? Because I for sure don't want to be the oppressed. I don't want to be the one without the power. But you can't look at things, everything in that kind of dual tone, I guess. It's not always just black and white. It has real nuance in this world, right? And I think plenty people kind of went with, Gaza is so small and Israel is so powerful and and they go in with this whole Israel cutting off the lights, Israel cutting off the water, when Hamas is taking the people, and well, not even the people, they're taking their own pipes and making missiles and all these things, and making guns or whatever, not guns, but the things to shoot
missiles, rockets, mosquito harassing me.
Are you serious? You are supporting a regime that is literally destroying a country, their own country. For what reason?
Yeah.
And nobody's listening. And then you literally live in the US, right? If US have to defend anybody, they're gonna have to defend Israel. So what you gonna see? What you gonna do? You're gonna be like, nah, I'm not going into that war because that is not my people. And, oh my God, the amount of people. Oh, I don't sound with Israel. Look at my skin. Babe, relax.
But, the irony in that. But you were talking about something there, and Kilborn said it. That is communist ideology. That's I don't know if you ever hear the conversations about neo-Marxism. Neo-Marxism is almost all of those things: critical race theory, critical gender theory, decolonization theory. The idea is seeing the view through the Marxist lens of oppressed and oppressor. Now, in original Marxism, the oppressed and the oppressor was in the class realm. So there's the bourgeoisie, and then there the working class, etc., etc., etc. And that's how Marx saw the world: oppressed, oppressor. Now, several Marxist students throughout the 20th century particularly noted that, so for example, the reason critical race theory came up, because I believe it was Derek Bell, who was a university lecturer in the United States. He noted that Marx was correct. The world is on the oppressed and the oppressor, where the oppressor oppresses the oppressed. But he saw it wrong. It wasn't class in the United States. In the United States, it was divided on race. And the feminists said, well, it's not on class, it's not on race, it's on sex. And the gender theorist, the queer theorist says, it's not on sex, race, or class, it's on gender and heteronormativity. And the heteronormative people oppress the non-heteronormative, the queer. And it's a Marxism theory. It's a Marxist view of the world, where you view the world through oppressed and oppressor. And that's an inaccurate view of the world. And it's a view that allows for an envious, vindictive, murderous view of the world. Because if you are the oppressed, anything you do against your oppressor is okay. And that's why people out there support Hamas, even when they kill innocent people and stab and rape and all of that kind of stuff. They're okay with it because they are the oppressed. The oppressed cannot do anything bad to the oppressor. And that's why revolution is the only answer. Revolution is the only solution. It's one of their quotes. Revolution is the only solution. Because you are oppressed, you must take over from your oppressor. What nationality was Karl Marx? Marx was a German, I believe, but then he spent his time in England for the most part. I just had several other things I wanted to comment on. Someone was talking about China and who China ever tried to take over. Do you know there's a country called Tibet? Do you know about the Tibetan monks? Go read that story. China invaded Vietnam. Taiwan technically is not. Well, Taiwan is old China. New China has been invaded by the Communist Party. The size of China wasn't always that size. China wasn't always that size. China grew over time. The reason China is so large is because they took over their neighbors that were neighboring them at that point in time.
Exactly. Yeah, China has a long history, right? China was.
Go ahead, I'll be right back.
China was many states and in certain things, but it's interesting because when it comes to viewing things through intersectionality, I've never really understood it per se, because sure, many things might intersect, but to view the world as oppressor or oppressed based upon certain things doesn't make too much sense. Everybody could claim some sort of oppression, right? But to think that intersectionality could govern your life and your identity is ridiculous. There are many. I'm sure there are women who support Hamas. I'm sure there are women who support a lot of things. You would think they are oppressed too. There are a bunch of working class people that support weird stuff too. You think they are oppressed. So a lot of black people support weird stuff too. You all think they are oppressed. So it's kind of weird to take up that sort of position on any sort of thing when in terms of oppressed or oppressor, when free will kind of reigns in terms of people's thinking, people's ideology. So it doesn't make any sense to me.
That's what you say with black people supporting my thing. One of the newest things, and I was on TikTok, I love TikTok live. I just watch scroll and watch. And I watched a TikTok live where this man, a black man, fight down a woman. Like, let me tell you, this woman came in, he was like, what race are you? No, he was like, hi, where you from? What's your pronoun? What race are you? So you don't know on the right line. So she was like, whatever, from where I see you or whatever, and I am mixed. So he was like, mixed? Where's that? So she was like, she's Italian, and some other thing, and she had a bunch of different places, and he was like, but where's that? Like, this is a color, you're black or you're white or whatever. So she was like, well, I guess the Italians are white, and I have some black in me, so I'm biracial. She was like, there's no such thing as biracial. I was like, bro, what? But they're talking like this KKK. Because that was the KKK thing. It was like, once you have one drop of black in you, you're black. That was freaking KKK. So black people are right now, the new KKK, are just so happy. They're just so happy to support and enforce what the KKK was doing back then. But because we doing it, it's like, it's the same thing like when they want colored dorm rooms and they want colored graduations and they want all of these segregated rules. It's like, well, it's okay because we want to do it. But when I was doing it in New York, fighting against it, right? So they need to stop the mind thing. Some of the brains not working.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Oh, well, that's the thing. I'm not saying that nobody is oppressed. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that just because people can be oppressed or are oppressed doesn't mean that they can't hold negative views or they can't take up positions that you would deem evil by the oppressor. Everybody does it. You understand what I'm saying? Black people have very racist views. Some black people hold very, very Nazism views that you always think that black people cannot even take up in their personal lives. So I'm not saying that oppressed people, I'm not saying that people can't be oppressed. I'm saying that oppressed people could also be evil.
I am so sorry about whatever noise you hear in the background. Did you hear noise in my background?
No noise in the background. I think it's your mic giving off a little feedback.
I'll go to the friend to come back. Read the comments and see what they say. So I think you're saying something about it. Okay, I'm coming. I think I'm coming back. Which I can't come back this weekend. I hear some stuff now. I'll go ahead and read your comments. I think I'm talking about it.
Oh no, free will exists in Palestine. I don't think people quite understand that. I don't know what you all feel. What do you all think people kind of do in terms of places that have conflicts per se? You know the Palestinian people live regular lives, right? They go to school, they go to jobs, work, you know.
Oh, well, I don't think that is mine because I think I'm still hearing it. Unless when I use it, I was still hearing it outside.
That might be just general feedback from everybody, Mike, to be honest.
It could be possibly. Yeah, wonderful. I really enjoyed the song. Thank you. We're in Palestine war. I think I missed most of these things.
We're in Palestine. I don't.
We're in Palestine what?
Well, home face. The thing about it is this, right? The Palestinian people have free will. If Hamas could launch attacks on people, then they have free will. The Palestinian people go to work, they go to jobs, they make money, they earn money, they become rich, they travel the world, they do all those sort of things. Spending hours at a checkpoint, that's nonsense because most Palestinians don't go through the Egypt checkpoint, they don't go through the Israeli checkpoint, so I'm confused.
Let me add to this because you make a statement that free will reigns, right? Have you ever spoken? I might get myself in trouble tonight. I was telling you, right? Have you ever spoken to anybody from Syria about Palestine? Anybody from Lebanon about Palestine? Anybody from Palestine as a matter of fact?
Yeah, I've spoken.
No, about what takes place in Palestine on a daily, not just when you use any hype right now, the hype at the moment, and the trend where everybody jumping on. The daily living of the people in Palestine, the daily living of the people in Gaza. You ever had an in-depth conversation?
Yes, I had a conversation. What's the point there?
I've had one.
So when I sit down with a whole Lebanese man, and tears literally coming in, man, I telling me about how these Israeli soldiers literally target Palestinian children, target pregnant Palestinian women, right? They gonna hype on me the trend, because I'm not following this now. They're not the trend. So when you come on and make a statement that because they get to go to work or because they get to travel, free will go reign in Gaza. They don't. Israelis are racist apartheid state.
Partner, wait. I want to have that discussion. Wait. So, are the Arab states racist and apartheid?
The RCs might have racists in the RCs, I not denying.
I ask you that, asking if the states, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Jordan, are they racist and apartheid?
Lebanon is not Lebanon. There is not apartheid states.
How?
You can't compare these countries to Israel.
How? Why can't you compare them? Are there?
Let me go to Israel. Let me go to Israel. Gaza, in particular.
Well, here's the issue. The Gaza is run by Hamas. Wait. Israel does not oversee the Gaza. Gaza is run exclusively by Hamas.
Gaza is not run exclusively by Hamas.
Is there Israeli administration inside of the Gaza Strip?
That was according to the so-called democratic process that we like, democratically elected.
Yes.
In Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
Democratically elected.
Yes.
Israel was to, because they don't like putting people democratically elected.
Mm-hmm.
We do not deal with them.
Well, here's this. Wait, just now, If Tobago democratically elect people that say they hate Trinidad and they promise that any chance they get they will kill all Trinis that they can, and Tobago elects them to run Tobago, Trinidad doesn't have a need. They can't be forced to interact with people that want them dead.
So, what would you expect in a population of around 2 million people, mostly youths, living in those conditions? Who you think they would elect? The people who've given them some kind of hope and want to fight?
That is hope. That's hope. Wait. That's hope. Wait, just now. That's hope. When pipes were donated for water, they dug up the pipes and made rockets. When concrete and material was donated for homes, they used it for tunnels. Tell me this. It's strange to me. Gaza is running out of food, they're running out of medicine, they're running out of water, but they're not running out of rockets. Isn't that amazing to you? So Hamas, the people in charge of running Gaza, would be more interested in smuggling in rockets than smuggling in food? How come they run out of food before rockets?
So listen to this, right? So according to your Western media logic,
Mm-hmm.
according to your Western media logic,
Mm-hmm.
it's better to live peacefully under the oppression and the genocide that's taking place,
Mm-hmm.
and suffer than fight.
What is genocide? You see, this again comes up. There's no genocide taking place. The Palestinian population is multiplying.
You believe in everything because you are pro-Israel and you believe in...
No, it has nothing to do with pro-Israel. I'm pro-fact. Is the Palestinian population decreasing?
Spoken to anybody from
I'm not asking this riddle. You see, this is this emotional leftist kind of nonsense. I'm not talking about whose emotion and who shed a tear and who tell you Israeli killed pregnant. We're dealing with facts. Show me numbers, show me statistics. Is the Palestinian population decreasing?
Your information is coming from the media, which is true, and everyone knows the media.
Okay. Well, you give me the information, please. Is the Palestinian population decreasing?
The Palestine right now has one of the youngest populations. Why is that?
Because many of the older people are dead.
Why is that?
Because many of the older people are dead.
Huh?
They have a young population because many people die.
How are they dying?
They're dying because they engage in violent activity and it's a high risk kind of thing.
So you are telling me, right?
Mm-hmm.
These people are wrong. These people are wrong for engaging in warfare, whether it be guerrilla war.
But I didn't say anything about wrong or right. I am saying that it's not genocide. Listen, from what you're saying there, they're engaging in a guerrilla warfare and they're losing. That's why they're dying. That's not genocide. That's war.
You, listen, I know for sure you're an intelligent person,
Mm-hmm.
and I will humbly request
Mm-hmm.
do some research and do the skim the surface of the Palestinian issue.
Bro, you mightn't believe. I know you mightn't believe this. I know you might not believe this because you have a view already. I have dug so in depth to that. I have read on many sides. I have taken in hours upon hours of pro-Palestinian talking points. I know what they say. It's an open air prison. It's a genocide. Yeah, ask.
Why does the so-called Israeli state agree to the borders? That they signed and agreed to and they keep encroaching and building more settlements.
All right.
Why do they go back to the borders that they agree to?
All right. Now, first up, let me start this by saying I am not an Israeli spokesman. I am not on Team Israel necessarily. I read the facts of this situation, and to me, the facts are obvious. Now, as to why Israel keeps expanding, I will say Israel definitely has an expansionist ideal. They do. But the reason Israel was able to expand in the first place, Israel accepted the borders of 1947 that were given to them, splitting the country. The Arabs did not and attacked them for it. Anything, to me, in terms of general how the law of war and such goes, you attack them for it, you have no claim to anything anymore. You decided we didn't like the borders that they were set, we're attacking you for it. You lost borders because you attacked the people. They didn't attack you and take the borders, you attacked them and lost your own borders.
They didn't attack first, anyhow you take it. How did these European Jews end up on that land to give them?
You do wait. You do understand that Europeans were in control of the land. You do understand that the Palestinians never controlled that land.
You do understand that they took people's home, they took people's land. If I come
Who is the people's land? You're not I hope you, just as you told me to take in some of the facts of the matter, I hope you do take in some of the facts of the matter. Who controlled Palestine before the 1947 solution to split it into Palestine and Israel? Who controlled it? Whose land was it?
I mean, whose land was it?
Who owned it?
Who owned the land, Nathan?
The British owned the land.
This is colonial, this colonizer, this colonial, they mean to own the land.
Let's go before, you know who owned it before the British got it in the early 20th century. Do you know who owned it before the British?
Oh my God.
Do you know who owned it before the British? Just now, I want to go down the road with him.
So these people is homeless people, they didn't have a lot.
Yes, literally. Yes, literally. It's a mixed group. You see, you don't understand history in that case. There are many homeless people. The Jews were homeless people before the 1940s, weren't they?
How the Jews was homeless? They was living comfortably in Europe.
Where was their home?
Well, in Europe.
So okay, wait. I want to go down the road with him. So the Palestinians didn't have a home because they didn't own the land of Palestine, but the Jews had a home because they could have lived in other countries. So why the Palestinians can't live in other countries right now?
The same Orthodox Jews tell you today that state is not theirs.
Listen, there's literally one faction that is 0.02% of the Jewish population, of the Jewish Orthodox population, that has an extremist view against the other Jews. They are anti-Zionist. And all of the pro-Palestine people go to this 0.02% people and say, these are Jews who say Israel shouldn't exist. That doesn't create the argument. You're showing me that you don't actually understand the history. This is the history of the world. We didn't own Trinidad. The English owned Trinidad. You could not like colonialism, but colonialism is the fact and history of the world. It's the reality of the world that existed. Before the British owned the land, the Ottomans owned the land. The Turks Turkey, people who came, the empire that came out of the Turkish heartland, they owned the land. Before, Muslim people. Before the Ottomans, another Muslim empire. Before them, there was a Christian empire in Jerusalem. Before them, another Muslim empire. Before them, it was the Byzantine. Before them, it was the Romans. Before them, it was another one of those attempted empires in those regions, going all the way back until you get back to the Israelites.
So by that standard, right? By that standard, which is whatever Israel they showed, because the British give them the land, the Palestinians should just accept it.
Here's my question. There's a Carib nation and a Carib chief in Trinidad and Tobago. The British gave our country to PNM to run. Should the Carib nation be able to now launch murderous attacks on Port of Spain, attempt to blow up the Twin Towers because they don't like that the British colonialists came, stole their land, and give it to PNM and Trinidadians?
The democratic process, the people appointed with any kind of violence against the Caribs at that point in time?
Who you mean? The PNM?
Yeah, it's a simple question.
Well, no, because the British already did. Oh, so what you're saying is the British were supposed to wipe out the Palestinians first and then give the land to the Israelites. That would have been better.
But the Palestinians aren't fighting the British. They are fighting the Israelis who are waging war against them.
I don't understand. You see, I am trying to get what your ground is for this point. You said it was historical. We went through to prove it's not historical.
I want to say the Israelis, the Jews went there under the guise of peace. Yeah, we need to leave Europe. We are home here, we come and to live.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that the Jews from Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Under that guise.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
And this side, you know what? It have little factions amongst them that not happy with us being here. Let me go and wipe out that village. Wrong?
That's not what happened. Let me tell you what happened. You're not getting the history. The Jews, let me go break it down, and then you could go and research this, and you don't have to take white man history. Go and get it from black men and brown men too. The Jews, there were always Jews in, there were always Jews in the land. They attempted to start repurchasing the land. Bear in mind, a lot of Israeli land was bought from Arab settlers. They bought it. Wait, let me finish, then you could jump in. Listen. You're not listening. That's why we're not getting each other. Listen. Many of the Jews bought that land. Then when they moved back in and they got the UN to make the two-state separation in 1947, the Israelis accepted that. The Arabs said, no, we will not accept and recognize Israel. We will push them into the sea. Israel did not start that war. The Arabs attacked them in the 40s, attacked them again in the 60s. The Arabs kept attacking them. It wasn't the Israelis who started those wars. Where is your proof that the Israelis started the war in 1940s?
Do you know about Nakba?
Yes.
Who started that?
The Arabs. Let me explain to you. The Arabs, when they were going to launch their offensive against Israel, sent out to their fellow people in Palestine and told them, clear out, because we are going to launch an offensive against Israel, so clear out of the region. Unfortunately, they lost. And when they lost, the 750,000 people that cleared out for them to attack couldn't move back in because they lost. So the Nakba was the Arabs' fault. that they keep blaming now on the Israelis. As I said, I delved into this history. And it's not even the white men that did this. You could go back in the 40s, read when the Arab leaders and the Arab kings asked the Palestinians to move out, clear out of the way so that we can come and wipe out these Jews and cast them into the sea and all of the grand talk that they did. It was them who precipitated this.
Nathan.
Yes?
I don't have the literature right now in front of me to direct you. But I will get and I will message you.
I could take that. And I do. And if you message me it, I will read. So if you have something contrary, please send it to me. If I'm wrong, please tell me I'm wrong and show me where I'm wrong. But as I said, I've read into this. You go and read Arab accounts. The Arabs recognize that Muslims, Arabs, they recognize that the Israelis are their cousins. Isaac and Ishmael, they recognize that. So they know. I know. I'm not going down that road. I am just using that to say that it is recognized even in that region that the Jews, the Israelis, do have a home there. They do.
The Jews always had a home there. The Jews was always living there alongside the Muslims or alongside the Christians.
So why can the Arabs have their ethno homeland and the Jews can't have their ethno homeland?
This conflict here started past the Crusades. This conflict here started when they bring the European Jews.
That is not true. You see, that's the history. That's the lie that the modern people try to tell you. Like the history only started 75 years ago. There were massacres in Arab and Muslim lands with Jews since 3,000 years ago.
I'm not talking about the Crusades.
I'm not talking about the Crusades either. Do you think that Muslims and Jews lived peaceably, magically before the 1940s? Because that's the lie that is told now, that the Jews and Arabs always lived in perfect harmony before the 1940s when the Europeans brought in these evil European Jews that started the conflict. No, there was always violence in that area.
There's always violence, and it would always have violence between different peoples. It always have disagreements between different peoples. It will always have it.
Right. And here's my question. Do the Arabs have an ethno-state? Well, not an. Do the Arabs have multiple ethno-states in the region?
Well, yeah.
Yes, they do. Multiple ethno-states. So, seeing as the Arabs have multiple ethno-states and Palestinians are Arabs, how come the single Jewish ethno-state in the region, the Arabs of that region don't want them to get it?
Because, Nathan, when you get into this thing, the Israelis, and I ain't saying Jews, I saying the Israelis, right, have an intention to claim the entire real estate.
You mean from river to the sea, as the Palestinians' motto is?
Yeah, they want the entire real estate.
So, you're understanding what you're saying. Both of them want the entire real estate. And the entire real estate you're talking about is a matchbox in a football field in Arab lands. So, like, to me, if I was king of the world, I was declaring that Palestinians, being Arabs, move back into Arab lands, leave that entire river to the sea, to the Jews, let them have their ethno-state homeland, and call that. Nobody transgress against the borders as they are now. Arabs can have their homeland, the Jews can have their homeland, and you all can trade. Now we could see who could live with who. But to me, it seems ridiculous. As an outsider, as I said, I am not Jewish, I am not Zionist. I just looking at this as a factual factual matter. Looking on the outside from this, it doesn't make sense to me that the singular Jewish state in an entire sea of Arab states is being told that they must split their one little sliver of land into half and half, Jew and Arab.
It's not a little sliver of land. But if you look at Gaza alone compared to the rest of the states, that is a sliver of land.
Is Israel bigger than Jordan?
No, of course not.
So, isn't Israel a little sliver of land?
I would call them a little sliver. The small compare.
Well, that's the point. They're getting a country smaller than even the singular Arab country next to them, while there are multiple large Arab countries. Chike asks, how come the American Indians don't have a piece of America? And that is untrue. Again, you have to follow history. There are many American Indian tribes that do have chunks of America, lucrative chunks of America. There's a really interesting piece. What is this guy named Santinello? I don't know how many of you follow Peter Santinello on YouTube. Really interesting guy. He goes about to different communities and spends time recorded. It's full long form thing. Go and look at his visits to the reservations and to Cherokee Nation, etc., etc. There are some native tribes extremely wealthy because they don't have to pay taxes. They own everything on their land and they make money from it. So actually, they do have piece of America.
Just like the Afghans, these people will never stop fighting.
I don't doubt that. I believe that. I believe that. We aren't disagreeing there. I 100% believe that. And let me say this. I understand why. You see, geopolitics doesn't affect emotion. Today, tomorrow, if let's say there's a world war, the US is in on the world war, the US commandeers Trinidad as an outpost branch, and then the US loses the world war and they lose the China Russia Arab alliance. All right, they lose and the China Russia Arab alliance takes Trinidad. I live here, but at the end of the day, the US lost the war. We were under US control. Now we're under Russian control. I could not like that, but I understand it. And why I say geopolitics has no effect on emotion, if Russians start to come in Trinidad and oppress us, because that's just the nature of the politics, they can do it. That's the law that it goes that way. I am going to want to fight too. I understand. And let's say the Russians come. Let's say that happens and the Russians come to Trinidad and they deal with the Carib nation. They speak to the Carib nation wherever they could find some remnants of them and say that we're going to leave you all in control of this nation of Trinidad and Tobago now, the Carib nation as it comes in. Okay. I could say I don't like that. I might say I want to fight, and I would understand exactly why people would feel like fighting. So I am not saying that I don't understand why the Palestinians fight. That's not what I'm saying at all. I am saying that I understand why both sides fight. And to me, there's a certain logic inside of the situation that's obvious.
I understand. But this is what enemy is but it does look like everywhere these European Jews land having problem.
you going down protocols of the elders of Zion kind of road there that I am not necessarily willing to go. Chike asked, how come it's not the other way around where the Indians own the land and give part to Europe? Because they were too weak. To the victor goes the spoil. I do not understand why in 2023 it's like we're now recognizing how human history progressed. Do you know there were many tribes, many civilizations that didn't make it? Very likely, if you are here right now, if your genetics exist, very likely your ancestors murdered some neighboring tribe. It's very likely. It's probably the most likely thing. War is the commonality of human history. Humans are tribal. Tribes fight. That's how it goes. And the winner takes it. That has been how it went. Now, what has happened strange in modern times is in modern times we are trying to give the losers of wars rights. That's only a modern thing. Chike says then let them fight. Well, exactly. And here's the thing. If they actually fight and they actually do a total war, one would wipe out the other and it will solve the problem. The problem is now in modern time where we don't want to wipe out. Okay, I just beat you and I beat you with good morality and I don't commit any war crimes against you. I win. Now you down. Listen to me now. It doesn't work like that because the loser doesn't want to stay down.
This is crazy. No, but this is nuts, bro. That you see, this could only be taught up in countries of comfortable abundance. This mindset of beat people like it's a chess game and you shake hands after is nonsensical. I don't understand how you could live in countries and eat Burger King and feel it's a kicks thing around here and think that is how the world's supposed to operate. That's not how it operates. Do you all understand, right? That the Aztecs conquered people in order to build their empire? Mesoamerica was literally a powder keg of different ethnicities clashing, and one came out on top because they were more powerful. Truth is the truth.
And the natives in Northern America were in constant flux. They regularly fought each other. Now, here's a point that you might not understand if you don't understand the history. North America is massive. Massive. So the tribes, some of the tribes had the ability to just run away. So that's partially why they didn't even advance. Now, the problem with Europe is you couldn't run away. Europe was a powder keg that you were locked and trapped into. So everyone had to get better at this war business. So by the time the Europeans left Europe, they were experts at fighting each other because fighting each other was all they did all the time for a very long time. So when they came to North America, the people that were the fighters, the Comanches, listen, the Europeans couldn't touch some of those Indian tribes that were warring, you know. They actually beat the Comanches and those plain Indians. The way they beat them was by killing out the bison. They killed out their food and that's how they beat them. They literally couldn't war them. So it's just the reality of history, reality of human history. This is geopolitics backed by the Americans that is causing the problems. Yes, partially, but no, not totally. No, not totally. Because if the Americans were not existing, there would still be problems between the Arabs and the Israelis. If the Americans didn't exist, then the Arabs may have genocided all of the Jews in the land of Israel right now. Would that have been better for geopolitics? I know some people might say yes, but I will say I don't think so. And people, many Americans wonder why America like Israel so much. What it is with the Jews. The Jews must have their hands in everything. And it's kind of obvious, many people say it and then they wonder why after they say it. Go look how many Jews are inside of the Senate, how many Jews are inside of the Congress, how many Jews are billionaires, how many Jews run corporations, how many Jews are very influential. Then obviously you understand why Israel has that place in the US. If the US, many of the powerful people in the United States are Jewish, are you surprised that they do have a favorable leaning towards the Jewish state of Israel? Now, if Islam and Arabs take over the United States and more leadership in the US becomes Muslim, then they would lean towards the Arabs. So to me, it's dishonest to make it seem like it's the geopolitics of the US alone that is causing this. Arabs donate to Palestine too. There are Muslims around the world that donate to Hamas. It's not only the United States doing it. It's kind of, to me, it seems like people are upset that someone else is beating them at the same game they're playing. The only way you could be upset is if you say that the whole game shouldn't be played and no one should have the game. And if you say that no one should play the game, then all of the conquest done by the Arabs has to be reversed. So the Arabs would have to move out of North Africa and return to Arabia and stay only there. So it's either you're okay with the game of conquest or you're not okay with the game of conquest. You can't be okay with it only if my team wins. But when my team is losing, then no, that's a bad thing. But the Western media is also make it unfair. How does the Western media make it unfair? If the Western media is the Western media, won't they give media for the West? It's like, I always hated United States coverage of Olympics, because when the US commentators come on and they're talking about the sports, you get a very American-centric view of the sports. But I could not like it because I'm a Trini, but I understand why they do it. They are Americans. You saying all Arabs are Islamic? No, Don, I am not saying that. I am making generalizations. If that's what it sounds like, that is not what I mean. I thought it would be understood. All Arabs are not Muslims. All Muslims are not Arabs, obviously. Wasn't it because the USA signed a treaty with Zionists? Yes, but why did they sign the treaty with the Zionists? They are just about spreading propaganda to sell their narrative. Exactly, that's true. But that's kind of what all media is about. Media is about selling their narrative. They want you to believe what they say. So I agree. I don't like Western media. Generally, if you listen most of my content, I rag on most of the media. The media is rubbish half of the time. CNN is garbage. MSNBC is garbage. Fox News isn't really any better. You aren't getting a disagreement in me there. They fuel what they want. The US need to have some intelligence. Middle East, I'm not sure. You'd have to rephrase that for me to understand what you mean there. But I agree. So, and this isn't the first time this happened. Back in Iraq days when they said they found weapons of mass destruction. You all remember the WMDs? You all remember the WM, and the media ran with it. The media was saying, yes, they did find it. Yes, yes. Trump, one of the, good night, Richie Rich, one of the most anti-war presidents in our lifetime. One of the, I think, the only US president to not start a new war in our lifetime. Trump was lambasted by the general Western media every day. The one day the Western media congratulated him was when he launched Tomahawk missiles into Syria. They ran articles and headlines. Trump finally shows that he's presidential because he launched missiles into Syria. I understand. I understand. I like the Indian lady journalist. She's a boss. That's very vague, Sobers. Which Indian lady journalist? The one from Australia?
About the lady from Sky News.
Yeah, I figured out. Rita Panahi. Is Rita Panahi her name is? Yeah, from Australia.
But I had a question to ask you, please, but you're running because you keep talking. But just a general question, I guess I could ask you or all these other people in the comments and stuff. We kind of talk about Israel cutting off resources to Palestine, right? But Palestine has a neighbor outside of Israel who is Jordan, right? Would be considered Jordan.
Well, that's on the West Bank is neighboring Jordan, Egypt is neighboring Gaza. They are different areas of Palestine. Palestine has the West Bank and Gaza.
Right. I know they have the West Bank, right? So they have Egypt as well as they may have Jordan, right? Mm-hmm. Would Egypt not be? Is Egypt not an Arab state?
Yes.
Right. Cool. Why aren't they reliant more on their Arab neighbors for most of the help that they need? Instead of making it out to be like, oh, even though they don't get all of the help, or not even most of the help from Israel, the way how they make it seem and they're saying, well, Israel cuts our waters and Israel cuts our life.
Muslim Brotherhood, how their presidents were murdered by the Muslim Brotherhood. Egypt wants nothing to do with the Muslim Brotherhood. So Egypt,
Okay.
Israel offered Egypt Gaza, you know. Israel blocked all help to Gaza. That's not true. Israel was like, you know, after they won it, they offered Gaza to Egypt and they offered the West Bank to Jordan. Here's what, you all take them and you all take them. Egypt was like, no thanks, we don't want those people. Jordan was like, no thanks, we don't want those people either. And there is geopolitics involved there. Now, there's also a side where in solidarity, they do not want, at least some Palestinians, this is a view that some have, they do not want to move out of the region, because if they move out of the region, their claim to the land is all but gone now. Now the Israelis can fully occupy the land and kick them out totally. And they're saying they're not going to fall for the same trick that happened at the Nakba that the guy was talking about, where 750,000 of them left, but they're not able to return. So they're like, we're not leaving, because if we leave, they're trying to trick us to leave and they wouldn't allow us to return. So that's part of it. Part of it is they don't want to leave because they may not be able to return. Then part of it is geopolitics, where their own neighbors do not want them, and there's friction within the Arab and Muslim world also. The religious side is also being used, but especially Israel. I disagree with that, you know, Cheeky. I disagree with that, because when I look around at most of the supporters of Palestine, there's one thing obviously in common: religion, Islam. So you can't say that the religious aspect is only on the side when it's obviously on the other side too. Israel doesn't allow Palestine to leave. Israel cannot offer Palestine to anyone. It's not theirs. We went through that discussion on how land has worked already. Israel doesn't allow Palestinians to leave. Israel cannot stop Palestinians from leaving through Egypt. They don't have control of the Egyptian border. That's on Egypt. So it's not only Israel stopping them from leaving. Hamas leader's son even turned against them. It's really a terrorist group at its roots. Yes, it is. That is their claim to the land, the Holy Land. That isn't their you see, their claim to, you do understand there are atheist Jews too. There are atheist Jews who still believe that they have a claim to that site, not based on God, Yahweh telling them it's theirs, but just based on historical provenance, that it's their land historically, and they were able to make deals to reacquire it, so it's theirs. All Jews are not religious Jews. In fact, I believe it's less than 50% of Jews are religious Jews. So, no, that's not actually true. Are you Team Gaza or Israel? I don't think it's a team like that. I am on no one's team.
Last question, though. Last one, because I'm sure dying. If Egypt, as well as Jordan, is not willing to help or assist Palestine in much more ways than Israel, how is Israel the only country that gets the heat from not allowing Palestine freedom of entry or freedom of movement, or like resources or whatever? If Egypt is also denying them and Jordan is also denying them, why is Israel the only one that everybody's turning on, like, while they're doing this to Palestine when everybody else doing it to them? So you know, asking questions, because I said before, I am not a historian.
Let me just answer Doc Egg there. Palestine has no passport to leave. Israel controls all materials, water, food, etc. To just drop back this fact here, Doc Egg, it's very interesting that they run out of food and medicine and passports, but they don't run out of rockets. How are they able to smuggle in the rockets? However, they smuggle in the rockets, smuggling food that way. It is just now, let me read through this. It's mostly religious, especially from the leadership and the Zionists. We are going back home. That's not religious, that's ethnic. You have that ethno-state side, but it's not religious as in based on God giving them the land necessarily, not all. Occupation is from the devil. I don't know what you mean by that. What is a Jew religion or ethnicity? Good question. Dr. Isabel Conjule. Right. Alright, go ahead. Let me hear you. Yeah, bro.
Hamas rockets is like a little more powerful than the rockets as we was here for fireworks Independence Night. Let's be real.
That's not totally true. One destroyed a couple cars in a car park really well.
All right, but
That doesn't make any sense.
let me touch on the religious aspect of this, right?
Wait. Just now, Duckegg says a terrorist group provided the rockets, not the people or government of Palestine. Does anyone want to inform Duckegg? He says a terrorist organization, not the government of Palestine.
Which is the government of Gaza? Hamas is the government of Gaza.
They were like democracy and they were democratically elected.
I didn't say they weren't, but they are a terrorist organization.
Oh God, Hitler was democratically elected. That doesn't mean Hitler wasn't running the function. He had dictatorship.
I will hold my comments on Hitler tonight.
You see, I told you all he going into our protocols of the elders of Zion thing. I could sense it. And you know, this is part of my issue, Hotep, on Twitter. I recognize this. I am not necessarily all that pro-Israel. I see a lot of bad things Israel do, and I look for the nuanced observers, the people who can see things on multiple sides. But then regularly, many of the critics of Israel who are trying to appear nuanced, they say we are not anti-Jew, we are anti-Israel. And you listen long enough and then they get into a point and then they reach. But you know, if you listen to what Hitler was saying and you really understand what he mean, and you're like, you only have a problem with Israel, right? Sure you do.
You realize that the anti-Semitism reaches to the surface.
You can't be Arab being, not me, well, let's say Arab. Arab being anti-Semitic don't make sense because Arabs are Semitic people.
Yeah, I agree. And I have made that point before. Semites refer to a wider range of people. But that is being pedantic. Because when someone says anti-Semitic, you understand that they don't mean the wider region of the Semites. You understand they mean anti-Jew. So an Arab can be anti-Jew. They can be.
Let me touch on the Islamic aspect of what's taking place in Palestine, Gaza, the West Bank, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, which is a Shia state in the midst of the world, is one of the main supporters of Hamas.
Yes.
Right? They are the only ones not afraid to come out and say we in support of Hamas. They are the only ones. They are the only ones that are afraid to come out and say we in support of Hezbollah. That is where the religious aspect will come in. Because the Shias, they are not being real here. And not how the fortunate here.
I know.
The ones that are going through outright say go ahead. All the water supplies, we'll supply all here. We have all your back. We don't care about the sanctions. We don't care about the backlash.
They never did, and that was the point I was making. Alien Ant, I was making that point, and several people don't have the history down on those issues, and they only get what they get through propaganda sources that talk about the last 75 years like nothing existed before that. Palestine was never a state. There were people who just settled in the region because it was a region in flux. It was a region always battled over. It was never a region that had self-governing, as in they own their own forward, their own land and property. It was never like that.
But whom face like Iran will outright support Hamas because Iran does not like Israel either. Their hatred for Israel runs as deep as possible. Yeah. But if you realize Iran, Saudi Arabia, they don't like each other. Saudi Arabia, Iran don't like each other. I know. I get that. I get that. We get that. But the thing about it is this is Hamas and Iran, forming a relationship. That's not a religious rep either per se. They just don't like Israel in the region. They want to basically create another caliphate, would you say, or an emirate. That's just how it works.
Let me say this to you. In that region, we have Saudi Arabia, who is a major player, right? They fall seen as the leaders in the region. They fall seen, right? Iran wants that position. And in Iran, whether you be Sunni, whether you be Shia, whether you be Orthodox Christian, you have to the Arab people by default. You're trying to Saudi Arabia as the leaders in the region. That is where the political game played, because Saudi aligned with the United States. Iran is not. But if you look at what we know now, Saudi slowly easing himself away from the United States. Slowly, piece by piece, some by some, and aligning themselves with China and Russia. Same thing Iran doing.
Well,
China broke a sort of peace deal and talking terms between Iran and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and there was talk that, and this is the part that shows me that this is geopolitics mainly, and it's not solidarity. Iran, a lot of the leadership in Iran, they don't care for Gaza. They hate those people really and truly, because Iran initiated this attack by Hamas. It's going to cause mass death in Gaza, and the reason they did it was to inhibit the peace deal that Saudi was going to do with Israel. They wanted to stop that was going on. So they're basically willing to sacrifice 2.2 million people in Gaza to get their geopolitical move and make sure that the Saudis don't increase their dealings with Israel. That's what shows it. And these and many people, because they have this sides idea. I am on team Gaza, so I okay with what Iran is doing, and Iran hates those people too. Iran will sacrifice every single Gaza citizen to get their ends done. And you're on team that side. They're not even on team that side. They're not on your team either. Like, if you're on team Israel, you think Israel has a right to exist, they have a right to defend themselves, and you think you jump up on team Israel, sure, and team United States, and you think that if they have the chance to stab you in your back and get some benefit from it, they won't do it. Of course they will. That's the very thing. That's why, to me, I evaluate this not on the team's basis. It's not on the team's basis. Hamas is a terrorist organization because they use terrorism to get by their means. Hamas is at the bidding of Iran. Hamas does not help Gaza. Hamas is tricking Gaza. Hamas is using the emotions of a rightfully frustrating situation to get their ends done. It doesn't help Gaza. None of this that is happening right now helps the 2.2 million people in Gaza. If Hamas was interested in helping them, they would have laid the water pipes instead of dug it up. They wouldn't have gone in and killed 1,300 innocent Israelis. Even if you say, like some people say, that this was known by Israel and Israel had the intelligence and they allowed them to come in. Even if Israel allowed them to come in, they still did it all on their own, of their own volition. Israel may have allowed it if you're saying so. And by doing that, by killing and kidnapping those 1,000+ people, how does that help any single Gaza citizen? Anyone?
Has Israel, let's hear more, right? Has Israel maintained the borders agreed to? Even if Hamas existed and Hamas wanted, let's not hear out, and Hamas wanted to be a thorn in the side, right? They could have dealt with Hamas more surgically than if they had maintained the border, because they would not have had
overcrowding.
They would not have an agreed population. Had they maintained the borders, and Hamas decided we still want to be a tool on the other side, they could have dealt with Hamas more surgically than having to drop bombs in a little place with 2 million people.
Correct. I agree with you. I think, for example, I have heard, I have read, I'm going to say I know, but I don't know because I wasn't there. I've read that Israel and Mr. Netanyahu himself were some of the sponsors behind the scenes of Hamas in their formation. They sponsored the Muslim Brotherhood. They sponsored them to form Hamas in opposition to the PLO, hoping that they would disrupt what is going on there. And look what it turned around to do now. It turned around and haunted them. The United States formed, at least helped form the Taliban in the earlies by sponsoring the Mujahideen down there, and look what it turned around and did. I don't agree that they're doing everything right. That's not what I'm saying. If that's what you think I'm saying, no, it's not. I'm not saying they're doing everything right. I'm not saying everything they do is good. That's by no means what I'm saying at all. And I think they have created some of the situations that they are in. They have created some of that conflict by making badly stepped moves. But the reality of those things is, for citizens of Palestine, of Gaza, you don't have much say in all of this, you know. And this is why you feel it for the innocent people. If you're a citizen of Gaza, you didn't decide for Hamas to launch the attack they did on October 7th. If you're a citizen of Israel, you're not necessarily deciding what your government does with the IDF. They choose to do what they do. And you pay the consequence in blood, and with people blaming you all over the world for it. So, I understand what you're saying, and I do agree that Israel has some fault to play in all of this. Everybody creates a problem, then sells the solution. That's the reality. Well, that's the government for you. That's the government itself.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
I'm a religious person, but I'm not really gonna speak religion here now unless you bring it up. Hamas, if I'm not mistaken, if my memory serves me correct, it is named after a person who started a Islamic militia. And he was he started a gang to fight against the Jews, either in the 50s or the 40s. And I think that's where they got Hamas is named after him. So
no. Hamas is named after an acronym meaning Islamic resistance or something like that.
Well, I can be corrected on that, but if my memory serves me right, it's named after an individual. It could be that they used Hamas, because Hamas is not his full name. Hamas is not his full name.
Okay.
It's just a part of his name.
All right.
But they derived that name from this person. But that's not what I want to say. I want to talk about international politics here now. As you said, Iran would sacrifice the Palestinian people, which I do think that is possible. But I would even go further and say the Arab world would sacrifice them too, because Saudi Arabia has drifted itself from the Palestinian people, and they were one of the greatest supporters of the Palestinian people. And no, they are not. Jordan has said absolutely they will not take in none, and Egypt will not take in none. Morocco and a lot of the other countries say Muslim countries say they will not take in them. But what is interesting now is Saudi Arabia is considering bringing up a proposal in APEC to go back to reducing oil. And if oil is reduced, that is going to affect the Silk Road for China. It's going to affect all the countries in Europe. It's going to affect the United States, all the countries in the Caribbean. And do you think it is possible that this can lead to World War III?
the tightening of the oil. I don't know if the tightening of the oil would do it, but the thing I am most worried about in leading into that World War III, and it could nearly feel sometimes like if some people are purposefully doing this, is the whole situation right now as it stands in the Near East there is a powder keg waiting to happen, whether Saudi squeezes back oil or not, because it seems it seems very likely that some of those neighboring countries of Lebanon could have filtering into the war. And if enough people filter into the war against Israel, the United States is going to join on Israel's side. And if the US joins troops on the ground fighting Arab nations in the Middle East, that isn't going to do anything to decrease the friction in North Central Europe there with Russia and Ukraine. That's just going to heighten what's happening there. And if that is happening in the Middle East, how are you going to tell China that they have to step back from Taiwan? So I think those issues may be more likely leading to it could nearly seem like it inevitably ends up falling into bigger conflict unless somebody at some point in time says we got to pull this back from here. If Saudi Arabia reduces output, I suspect they will remove Maduro in Venezuela. You see, for the Saudis too.
Oh, say that again.
Someone here said if Saudi Arabia reduces output, I suspect they will remove Maduro in Venezuela. And that will be interesting.
You realize that they have lifted some of the blockade in Venezuela?
Yes, we started talking about that today.
That's a very good point. But what is going to happen is the Silk Road that China plans will not be possible without the oil from Saudi Arabia. So China is going to get involved.
But that's why I said I don't even know what the Saudis are going to do, because if it's one thing, and I understand what I mean. I could rate the Saudis in a certain sense, you know. And this is the benefit of a monarchy. They run things as a family business, as it were, to their best interest. And I am not sure if they're just going to cut it back just like that, because there, as you were talking about, there are some negotiations that seem to be taking place trying to pull Saudi closer to the BRICS group. But the Saudis don't necessarily want to just push off the US just so, because the Saudis do not want to make enemies of the United States, because there are lots of enemies already in the United States itching at the chance to get back at Saudi. Bear in mind, the Sauds were fingered as being partially responsible for 9/11. These geopolitical issues do not die. And it was always interesting back then. The vast majority of the hijackers were Saudis, but they invaded Iraq and Afghanistan because they had to keep the Saudis as allies. Now, if the Saudis show themselves to no longer want to be allies with the United States, they put themselves in a risky position. I am not sure the Saudis really want that. They seem to want things running relatively peaceful to make money. I don't think the Saudis want to put themselves in front of anyone's crosshairs. The reason the Saudis, like you were talking about, the reason they seem to be moving away from Palestine was because they were moving towards Israel, which has commerce. That was the idea of the Abraham Accords, the idea that Trump was going with. The idea of peace in the Middle East, the previous idea was Israel must make peace with the Palestinians, and then that peace translates towards the other countries. But the idea of the Abraham Accords and those others were bypassing Palestine. They make peace with the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates and those guys, and forget about Palestine, make peace otherwise. And it was working because Israel has commerce. And the Saudis, the Emirates, they are very interested in commerce. So that was working.
But on. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I think they cut back in oil and gas supplies. They could be doing that to support Russia because Putin is trying to squeeze Europe. Right?
Europe would not. That's the thing. Who you said that? I'm glad you said that because that was a bit we didn't really put into the calculator there. Europe. Listen, Europe is in such a precarious position, and I think they put themselves in that place. It's not to the extent of this, but it could nearly be like Gaza is to Iran, Europe is to the United States. Europe is getting or might be setting up themselves to get a licking because of positions taken by the United States and Russia. Europe needs fuel. They need energy. In Germany, they just fired up their coal plants again. It's a scary place for Europe. And if the oil and gas is further squeezed, more than it already is, what is going to be Europe's position? And by the way, Europe is so peaceful now because there's an abundance of resources. If things start to get dicey, all that peaceful Europe thing, I think, will be done. You're saying something, Toby?
Yes, I take what you say. I'm not sure I would agree with that. They have an abundance because right now Germany is upset because of the blowing up of the gas pipe. France is upset because the 11 countries in Africa are drifting away from France. So France right now is nervous because they need the uranium and other material. They have the largest collection of gold in the world, and yet they have no gold mine. So right now, I think France is a bit nervous, and England is kind of happy that France is nervous, and England is kind of happy that the pipeline is blown up because England, you would think England and Germany is one. They don't really like one another deep down, you know. I grew up in London, and I remember as a little boy, the toys they used to give us were Germans told you as the bad guys. So you would grow up, and I used to hate Germans. when they used to give me the German toys, I didn't want to be the German toys. You know, it's like being cowboy and Indians. Nobody wants to be the Indian. Well, in England, the Indians were the Germans. You see, so there's that animosity, and it's also with America because they came into World War II too late. You see, so, but I want to say this. The Jewish flag has two lines on it, and you know what the religious extremists say it represent, right?
No, I don't.
Okay, the top one will represent the Euphrates River. And the bottom one represent the River Nile. And in the Holy Bible, in the book of Genesis, verse 18, the covenant made by Yahweh and Abraham is that Israel constitute all the land between the River Nile and the River Nile
and the Euphrates,
and the river at the top, which is the Euphrates River. And if you look at a map, you will see that the River Nile runs inside Egypt.
Well, deep into Africa, actually.
Two lines on the flag. That's why there's two lines on the Jewish flag. From the river to the river. So, from a religious perspective, to me, it looked like there is no way to avoid war. Now, absence of religion, if you look at it abstractly, politically, everybody got their own interests. Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria. If you look at Saudi Arabia, they don't like Iran because they are not Arabs, they're Persian. And a great percentage of the Saudi Arabian population are Shiite Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
They're not Sunni. And they're uncomfortable about that. So you see, everybody got their own interests.
Correct.
So it is a very dangerous scenario to me. Politically. Politically, it's very dangerous.
Correct.
Take the religious aspect out of it. It's very dangerous.
Correct. I agree everything you said there. I didn't know that was the representation on the flag. I didn't know that. I know that biblical promised land is Euphrates to Nile. I am very much aware of that. That is what they consider that. But that was never ever under Israeli control, ever. Even in their accounts that might be legend and etc., it was never even close to that much under their control. But yes, I am aware that was the promised land in... What's that?
It was a secret. The Jews never revealed it. Only the religious sect knew that the two lines on the flag represent the two rivers, the Euphrates River and the Nile River. And it is in Genesis 15 verse 18.
Yes, the Euphrates is in Iraq. And if religious extremists in Israel want to or have intention of taking over from the Euphrates to the Nile, that is pretty much the entire Arab heartland. You could understand why that would be very, very problematic.
From a religious point, it's got to be World War III.
Yeah.
From a religious point of view, I don't see how you can avoid it.
But, really and truly, to some extent, like, nearly the vast majorities, it could probably be the vast majority of wars in human history, to some extent, were fought over that same piece of land from Euphrates to Nile.
Oh, yes.
The fertile crescent there of Euphrates down to the fertile Nile Delta Valley. Nearly all the wars of humanity, to some extent, were fought somewhere between there.
Exactly. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Mr. Humface, I think he was referring to Iran because Shia is dominant in Iran. Sunni is dominant in Saudi, if that's what the discrepancy there.
Yeah. Saudi Arabia, they propagate the Wahhabis. So a lot of the mosques in England and France and Germany, Saudi Arabia pays for those.
Doc Egg, the entitlement to the land isn't based on their religious scripture. The entitlement that they have to the land right now is based on the colonial history, where Britain had it, Britain allowed them to get peace. And then after that, it's based on generally the rules of war, that they were attacked and they conquered the rest. Now, you could say that the religious text doesn't allow people to get something, but that's irrelevant. People have attempted to conquer the world over religious texts before, and your view of the other people's religious text doesn't stop them from doing it. I would say too that I don't know if you are Muslim, but there are some people who believe that the Muslim text invites them for global conquest too. And I mean, you can't be angry with people over what their text says. It's religion. Both Jewish and Islamic beliefs create a trajectory for conflict if people pursue it fervently. Yes, they do. Well, really and truly, curve on. When you look at things like that, when you go back in history, that's actually most countries' beliefs, Most countries' beliefs were of the nature that our gods, our belief system was insular. It was aimed at us. So our God protects us and tries to make us win. And we're fighting the people on the outside. So our aim is for our God to be triumphant over everyone else's God. If you look at the stories of the pantheon of many of the gods of old, you literally see that story playing out. The god of this tongue fought with the god of this town, and if this town won the war, then the god of this town was actually the victor. That's history. That's human history. You could not like it, but it is. Not Zionists. Zionists were derived in Europe. Okay. and they are labeled terrorists, but these aren't. Their claim to the land is multi-tiered, not only based on colonialism, etc. It depends. Exactly. It is multi-tiered. I agree with that. It is multi-tiered. Prophets came in different times, including Jesus. Okay, but the religious text does provide much historical facts. Yes, they do. And some people, I find it so amusing that some people attempt to say, like, the religious text is all fairy tale, and not understanding that a huge chunk of their understanding of history comes totally from some of those religious texts. In fact, for a large portion of history, the only way we understood things before a certain point was through those religious texts. In fact, for a large part of finding additional evidence to prove history, the finding of that evidence was found by following the religious texts. So, like, the idea that somehow these are fairy tales that don't have anything to do with the real world, come on, you have to, even if you're an atheist, get a more solid understanding of what religious texts are and their veracity in truth and fact.
Yeah, some could say that religious texts are history books in of itself, right? To a certain degree, it's like that. But in this thing about this particular thing, it's funny how people really don't view the history of Jewish people within that particular region. I'm talking about Zionism was created in Europe, and yes, Zionism was created in Europe, but Zionism was created in Europe for a particular purpose. Obviously, if we actually look back at the history of the person that created Zionism and why Zionism it kind of formulates around Jewish people heavily today, it's all based upon the persecution. That's the whole point and mood of it. I don't think people quite understand that Jewish people have been fighting other people for as long as time could tell, like most people have been doing around the world. You know what I'm saying? So it's funny here. Nobody goes to Japan and say, why did Oda Nobunaga take over the whole of China and unify it, and why he had to subjugate lesser clans? Like, he was more powerful, that was it. He wanted to unify Japan, and that's how it goes, right?
Dakeg, the funny thing is, what you're saying there, the it's BJP party, I think, that Modi runs, is a Hindustani national party. And they are for exactly what you're proposing there. Go on Twitter and look up at BJP supporters and see what they have to say about Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. Look at what they have to say about it. And if they had the ability
what are you saying? So are you? I never thought of that. Because the Muslim population of India is 200 million.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a great loss of your population.
Yeah.
Superpower.
I'm not saying that they're going to, but if you read what the BJP extremists say, that is what they say. They are Hindu nationalists in India that want all Muslims out, and they want to retake and claim all of the land that is originally supposed to be the Hindustani. And they have some grounds for it, because the Muslims came there through invasion. The Muslims did come there through invasion. So,
that's right, they did.
So there are people who say those same things. The Quran was revealing a certain for a reason. Okay. They do believe that. So what you're saying there, Dokeg, is just a matter of ability. If someone comes in and they do have the ability, it may shock you all of a sudden. Wait, there are other people who want to take land. Yes, there are. And people were talking about China in the beginning. Go read. I believe there's a region in China that they label as having more wars than even the Fertile Crescent of the Euphrates. China had an incredible amount of wars. The reason China is this massive, cohesive, unified landmass is because a lot of blood was spilled to make it that way. Everyone, all the tribes in China mainland didn't all want to serve under one ruler. They were forced to do so. It's the way of the world.
I'm gonna say this before I leave, but I want you to say if my hypothesis is wrong. World War One was connected to the scramble for Africa.
Yes.
Because Germany never got a good portion of the third world people's country.
Hitler wrote about that. Hitler wrote about that clearly. You know, he was upset that Germany didn't get what France and England, etc., got. So yeah.
Right. So therefore, that led to World War II.
It did.
All right. So now we have 1884. From 1884, they chopped it up. It wasn't done fairly. Germany got upset. Hitler came along and said, this is not fair. And he wasn't even German. And he started World War II. And now, the very same lines that these people said, Jesus told them they can go and, what did Pope call it? The doctrine of discovery from the 14th century. And America have their doctrine, the Monroe Doctrine. Other powers have their doctrine. I don't see how this is not going to lead to the next war. I wish you could give me an hypothesis in which it's peaceful and everything will work out great.
Bro, I don't know if there is such a hypothesis. And I was making that, no, I can't remember which one which show that was, but I was saying something similar to that, where I kind of believe, after reading some of history, it's like wars never end. The war that goes on now was started by a war that happened previously, which was started by a war that happened previously. So you're right. It seems like we may be running into a World War III that was precipitated by some of the actions that happened in World War II, and World War II was precipitated by the actions of World War I, which were precipitated by previous actions and previous. And like, if you go back to the beginning, like, all of it is because Cain killed Abel. It could seem so, like it all just has one to do with each other. And I see that same thing that you're pointing out there. I am not sure the the hope against war, to me, the hope against war of the last 30, 40, 50 years was mutual benefit in gain. The haters of capitalism could say what they want, but I think capitalism is what kept the peace for the last how much ever years. By and large, it wasn't totally peaceful, but by and large, peace. When you have
Can you expound on that a little bit more? Because I would hold the opposite to that.
Here's why I would say that. The reason that the Marxists decided to get into the universities was because they made a revelation in the mid-20th century. They wrote that people with their needs met do not revolt. They're happy people. So you cannot get Americans to do a revolution because they have their needs met. And the reality is, nearly globally, by and large, it's much more difficult to get people to risk their lives when their needs are sufficiently met. So World War I, there was quite a bit of poverty in many of the countries that triggered some of that. World War II, Weimar Germany went through a very difficult time that bred some of that. Now, the abundance of the modern world could make some of those things, some of those wars in that way, a little more difficult. But the problem, I think, in the modern world, past the abundance, as it will, post-abundance world, we're returning to the problems of ideology, where it's not a matter of resources necessarily that the fighting is happening here. It's ideology. And to me, that might even be worse than resources. South Africa went through the same thing Palestine is going through. No one listened. Bro, I don't believe you. You're spouting lies continually. I was reading some of the things you were saying. A lot of it is misinformation and untrue. And it is not It is not.
This is funny.
It is not. The same thing as South Africa. Like, come on, relax,
Africa,
please.
South Africa is a country in southern Africa. Palestine is not even a recognized state. So, no, you see, this is where people don't even know what apartheid means. Listen, 20% of Israel's population are Arab.
All right. If you're watching this over there on YouTube or on Instagram, the live just cut out. On TikTok, apologies to all of you over there on TikTok. We'll have to rectify that issue. Until the next one, I'll see you guys again for the next Mindful Live show, which is going to be tomorrow evening around that 9 p.m. time. Until then, I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. I will see you in the next Mindful Live show. Stay well. I am out. Bye, folks. Laters.